For some odd reason, Pastor John Paul Miller has released more medical documents when it comes to his now deceased wife. And there's something very important in those documents that exposes the lies that John Paul Miller has been telling about the mental health of Mica. I'm not talking about the questionable 2017 diagnosis by a plastic surgeon. Yes, that's right. John Paul Miller says a plastic surgeon diagnosed his wife's mental health. I'm not even talking about the questionable documents filled with basic misspellings and multiple notary stamps from 2024 that was used to admit Mica into a mental health facility against her will. We're going to go to 2022. Now remember, Mica allegedly took her own life on April 27, 2024 at Lumber River State Park. And the end of Mica's life matches the narrative that John Paul Miller has told for several years.
When you spend 7 years trying to keep someone alive by just taking a few pills that their family tells them not to take, then when they don't take it, they go into a hospital, their family takes them out, and then you spend 3 months trying to get them help when their family's telling them that you're evil and the bad person, and then it finally happens, the thing that you've been dreading for 7 years, then you're trying to prevent for 7 years, then it happens. I don't know what the correct response is, right?
John Paul once said that Mica has attempted to take her own life 6 or 7 times. But then he retracted that statement and said it came down to 1 time in 2018, where he claims neighbors heard the commotion, heard the shot in the backyard, and they called 911, and police showed up, took Mica to a mental health facility. Well, there's one problem to that story. No neighbor ever remembers such a thing happening. I've spoken to several of them who lived in the neighborhood back in 2018 during this time. They say they've never seen cops at John Paul's house during that time. But more importantly, the police say such event never happened. They have no record of answering a call or responding to a call of shots fired at John Paul Miller's house. And they certainly have no record of transporting Mica to a local mental health facility. And to go on top of that, Mica Miller does not remember the event herself. Yes, she has told people that she attempted back in 2018. But she also told those people that she has no recollection of trying to do so, that she simply depended on the story that her pastor husband was feeding her. Now, for those of you new to this case, that's the basic foundation of this story. Mica Miller allegedly took her own life, and John Paul Miller has said that she's tried to do so for the past 7 years, that she has bipolar 1, 2, 3, schizophrenic, all that stuff. But friends and family of Mica say no, that's simply not true. And she didn't take her own life. She was murdered. And over the course of their 7-year marriage, Mica Miller was hospitalized multiple times. And if one of those hospitalizations came back in 2022 of November. But a couple of weeks before that hospitalization, Mica and her best friend Charlotte decided to go to a local spa and enjoy an ice bath. Now, this happened on November 15th, 2022. I want you to remember that because it is critical. This was something that Mica loved to do. She loved ice baths. The women have a good time, but later that night, once returning home, this is where the infamous "who would you kiss" fight happens between John Paul Miller and Mica. Again, for those of you new to this case, this night is critical in this story. John Paul Miller allegedly asked Mica if she were to kiss another female, who would it be? Mica initially refuses to answer the question, but JP won't accept a non-answer. Finally, Mica says her best friend Charlotte, because Charlotte would not tell anyone. That sets John Paul Miller off. And Mica no longer feels safe inside of their home. She escapes to her sister's house that's a couple of hours away. And that's when this infamous text message and 911 call was made by Mica's sister.
But prior to that, he was threatening to come in here, and he said, "Call the cops. I don't care. I'm armed and ready." which he is. He just purchased about 6 firearms in the past couple of days.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, a few days later, Mica returns home, and her and John Paul decide to go on a little getaway to Asheville, North Carolina. This was supposed to help solve the issue that they had had over the last several days. But according to Mica, the trip was anything but wonderful. Just 8 days after that trip, Mica is found by her sister at a local doctor's office, where Mica collapses. Staff at the facility call 911, but John Paul Miller arrives first, and he attempts to take her away. Police catch up with John Paul and pull him over. And according to police reports, John Paul Miller doesn't allow police to talk to Mica until Mica's sister catches up. According to Mica's sister, she tells them everything, that John Paul was torturing Mica. And that's when police separate JP and Mica, and they realize Mica needs medical attention. John Paul Miller is angry that police were called. He's furious that an ambulance is going to take Mica to a local medical facility. He even tells the family that they're going to pay for the hospital ride. Mica's admitted into a local mental facility for evaluation. And now we have the medical documents from her evaluation. Remember the ice bath between Mica and Charlotte just 2 weeks prior to Mica being admitted into the hospital? Well, JP sent this text message out to friends and family of Mica's. He says doctors believe the ice bath triggered the mental breakdown of Mica's. But that's not what the medical documents say. The medical documents released by John Paul Miller himself. Let's read it. On November 29th, 2022, the clinician notes this. Husband states patient started doing Mind Zero several weeks ago, which is a service in Myrtle Beach that has clients go back and forth from ice baths and saunas to release toxins and emotions. Husband states that he heard that can cause stress and trauma responses, so he wanted us to know. It's not the doctor that said the ice bath triggered us. It was John Paul. But there's something even more critical about this message inside these medical documents. Let's take a look at the original text that John Paul sent. It was November 29th, the same day, at 7:15 a.m. The clinician notes her conversation with John Paul hours later at 12:42 that same day. Now, many of you may be asking, Robbie, maybe they were just simply summarizing the day and the conversations they had. Well, that makes sense, except for here, they're giving almost hourly updates on Mica's condition and the conversations they've had. Some of those updates in less than an hour between each one. This was no summary. The conversation had just taken place. John Paul Miller was already setting the narrative with friends and family before ever having a conversation with medical professionals. This is clear evidence that John Paul was lying to friends and family about what doctors were saying. And it's clear evidence of him trying to set the narrative of Mica's mental health with medical professionals, just like he has tried to do with you.
The people who were saying justice for Mica are raising money for the people who caused Mica's death. They're using the money to sue the man who kept her alive for 7 years and did everything he could to help her, and his church. I don't even get that. I don't understand it. I need somebody to explain that to me. All I can think of is there's evil in the world. That's all. That's the only answer I have is that Satan is at work in the world.
The FBI continues to investigate the death of Mica Francis.